Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of 1990s Represent. Again, we are in our sixth cycle of 1997. Talking about a movie on this episode, or three movies, I should say, and we are covering the Star Wars Trilogy Special Edition. For that, I have this break the shirt out occasionally. I think I wore the shirt on one other video. This really cool Star Wars shirt that I still have from probably 96, maybe 97. I have a few other Star Wars shirts that are really beat up, but I, just can't get rid of them because they're just really sentimental. Just really cool Star Wars shirts that I picked up around this time period. But anyway, we are talking about the Star Wars Trilogy Special Edition here, released over 3 months in 1997. So A New Hope was released in January, with The Empire Strikes Back getting released in February, and The Return of the Jedi getting released in March. I have some notes here about it, and we're going to get to those notes. But before that, I also have these really cool Star Wars Trilogy art books that I picked up in 1997 that cover the special edition. The book for A New Hope, this one here, as well as the book for, let me actually just pull it out, Return of the Jedi, also have the movie scripts in them, as well as a bunch of other like concept art and things like that. So we have like the sail barge here, so you can kind of see that. Really cool artwork, a lot of great Ralph McQuarrie like artwork. Like, is this a Ralph McQuarrie painting? You see? Yeah, so the various paintings from various artists. Ralph McQuarrie being one of the kind of key concept artists on the Star Wars trilogy. But I do have the books for, we move them around a little bit so we're in order. Again, A New Hope. This one includes the script. For some reason, and here's the Empire Strikes Back book. No screenplay for The Empire Strikes Back, so I'm kind of a little disappointed with that. But again, just really cool concept art there. And then wrapping it up, we have Return of the Jedi art and the screenplay from, and it includes art from the special editions as well. I think prior to this, they just had them based on the original versions of those films. And then when they did the special editions, they included art from the special editions as well. So yeah, those are really cool art books. I remember hearing internet rumors. The reason I got those is like so you can like see if there's any changes in dialogue. And there was rumors in obviously like early 97, maybe like late 96 online, like various like web forums and what have you, or very bare bones versions of those kind of things, very basic versions. That Boba Fett had some additional dialogue. I don't think that was the case. But getting that screenplay, I was able to like hoping the Empire Strikes Back one had the script to kind of verify that. But of course, the Empire Strikes Back, out of those 3 books, the only one without a script. But I have my notes here for it. We're gonna get to these notes here. And another thing that you may notice in the background in both of these, if I can point correctly, right there where my finger is, but behind my finger now, is a very cool Star Wars hat I picked up several years ago. Flat bill brim, whatever you want to call it, but just a really cool Star Wars hat. And the main part of the hat in the front here has both the split in half, the Imperial and Rebel Alliance symbols. So really cool hat. But we're going to get to the notes here about this. So you may notice over there, the Return of the Jedi has a release date of March 7th. That is actually inaccurate. So that is the original like teaser poster for the films. Originally, it was going to have that release date, but they pushed it back a week. We'll get to that in just a second. But anyhow, release dates for these films, all in 1997. A New Hope was released January 31st, followed by The Empire Strikes Back, February 21st, and then March 14th for Return of the Jedi. Return of the Jedi was originally going to be released March 7th, but they pushed that a week back to give New Hope and Empire Strikes Back a little bit more time, just to make more money at the box office. So they pushed the Return of the Jedi back a week. I saw these all in the theater when they came out. I actually saw New Hope twice. even no matter like what you feel, how you think about the Star Wars Trilogy Special Edition, and kind of like how we look back at it now, generally a lot of people don't look back at it very favorably. But I remember just having at the time, a very, very good time at the theater. It's one of my favorite movie theater going experiences. A New Hope specifically. My friends and I ended up the theater here, which I've talked about multiple times, would generally never get stuff on time. So if you want to see something big, you would either have to hope that that theater was going to get it. Most of the time they did on big releases, but a lot of times they did not get everything right on time. For some reason, the Star Wars Trilogy Special Edition was one of those times. So we all ended up driving to Vail to see these movies. Went to a theater that had like a really cool balcony. The balcony was kind of awesome. It would like we were in the very first row of that balcony, so there's nobody in front of us, nobody blocking our view. Maybe like 10 feet below us, maybe was the main floor of the auditorium. So we had a perfect view of this theater. We basically had these same seats, or at the very least this same row for all of the films. So we went back to that same theater for Empire Strikes Back as well as Return of the Jedi. It was cool because my friend had a car, an old, like it was like would have been 20 or so years old at this time. Some car from the mid 70s. So picked me up, whatever weekend in January that was that it came out. We drove over to see it, and it was kind of cool because it was a car that theoretically and very possibly was a car that was driven to see the original Star Wars trilogy in theaters, or at the very least maybe A New Hope, or probably could have been all three of the films, because we have New Hope in 1977, Empire Strikes Back in 1980, and then 1983 for Return of the Jedi. So this car could have been driven to all three of these films, but perhaps even multiple times. But yeah, we went to the theater. There was actually like people in costume. I had never seen that at the theater up to that point. We had people. I think my friend had a toy lightsaber with him, one of the Kenner lightsabers from, I think it came out in 1995, maybe 96. And I think the only one they had out at the time was the Luke Skywalker green Return of the Jedi saber. And I think we saw somebody else my friend, like we were leaving the theater after seeing this having this awesome experience, and my friend like was driving away, pulls his car to the side, gets out, and there's another kid with a fake lightsaber, and they had like a little like impromptu lightsaber duel. It was just a really cool experience. But this was also the first time I saw these films in theaters. So grew up watching them off of like HBO or like VHS. I think we recorded a bunch of them off of HBO at one point. And sorry, excuse me, or watch them on HBO. So we had them on VHS, and then of course I picked up the trilogy, the 1995 edition, which was like the THX VHS box when that came out, and had never seen them in theaters up until when they did the special edition. So that was just a really cool experience because I had seen these films, countless times, and this is the first time, seeing them in theaters. So it was really cool. This was released again in 1997 to kind of coincide with the 20th anniversary of the original New Hope film, or just Star Wars as it was called when it first came out. Let's see here, I got to the thing about the theater, got to cover that. Basically, it cost, I think, overall maybe like $15 million to do this project. I think they spent $10 million, or George Lucas spent $10 million on doing A New Hope. And which is kind of funny because it cost $10 million initially in like 1976, or whenever they filmed the original. They cost basically $10 million back then for the original film. Each Star Wars film after that was a little bit less expensive because they had, costumes, props, stuff like that already kind of ready to go. Like certain sets kind of were already there. Like the Millennium Falcon set, they probably just kept them. I don't really know. But then the Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, another $2.5 million each on those films. There's an interesting quote here from Dennis Muren, who is a visual effects artist, and I think he worked on the first 5 films, so that would have been up to Attack of the Clones, I think. Let me actually pull this quote up here. And this is kind of a little kind of criticism about maybe like they kind of did these films, and they made it very hard to ever kind of get the originals again. I think for years, like the best way you could watch the originals before they just did the DVDs was the Laserdisc versions. And I think even then, like the laser, like it was essentially the same print. I don't remember exactly because I don't have any of the films on Blu-ray yet, but and I have most of them on DVD. So I have the 2004 edition on DVD. What else do I have? 2004 edition, and then I think I have the prequel trilogy on DVD as well. But the quote from Dennis Muren is, quote, "You know, I was fine with doing it. I didn't feel at all that we were hurting anything. My feeling always was that the original version was always going to be there, and I don't know if that's necessarily happened. George hasn't put the effort into doing an HD, super good HD version of the original versions, and I don't know if that will ever happen. But at the time, my feeling was that we could finally make these shots better. You know, he went through and picked a bunch of shots, and I picked a bunch of shots, and we redid them so they just looked a lot better. I was fine with it, and I think it's gone overboard. I think it's been done too many times and too many shots, but I just feel as long as the original version is always there, that it's fine to be able to work on it later, and sort of like, so what, you know? Kind of, I think, kind of relating to, you know, the fact that, like, eventually they did the 2004 editions, which added more changes. They did, like, was it like 2011, I think, was the Blu-ray. They did, like, the whatever versions are on Disney Plus currently, like, changed some more stuff. Local theater here, I want to say how long ago, like, a few years back, played the original trilogy, but I think it was kind of whatever the most up-to-date version was, so probably the Disney Plus versions. It was still cool again to see it in theaters because I hadn't seen it in theaters since 1997. But yeah, a lot of the changes, like with this particular one, and then the subsequent changes, I think there were some changes that, you know, like didn't need to happen. Some of them I understand why they did happen, but like for example, when they changed Boba Fett's voice lines to be Timaru Morrison, who plays Jango Fett, and then obviously Boba Fett in the Disney Plus show. They did all of Boba Fett's dialogue, or redid his dialogue with that actor, which I totally understand because the way that's the way Boba Fett probably would have sounded in his adulthood anyway. But I kind of like in my headcanon of it, I was kind of like under the impression of like, okay, like maybe nobody really knows what Boba Fett actually sounds like, and maybe in his helmet he's got like a vocal kind of like not a scrambler, but something that like a voice changer of some kind. And then that way you can explain why his voice in the original Empire Strikes Back and even in this 1997 version is different than the way that Jango Fett sounds. And Boba Fett's a clone, so it definitely makes sense. But that's like a change I didn't like. There's a bunch of like other stuff they subsequently added in, which some of it works, some of it doesn't. And we'll get to the changes that I like and dislike about the 1997 version a little bit later in this video. But that was an interesting quote from David Muren, kind of like going back to how, you know, like they've kind of messed with the film probably more than they should at this point. Let's see here. Like I said, like some changes like I think were good, some not so good, especially ones that actually change out kind of like character dynamics, like the whole Han Solo shooting in response to Greedo shooting him. I think in other versions they've kind of sped that up to make it like not like it's like Han gets shot at and he's like what, and basically fires back at Greedo. So changes like that. But yeah, they kind of did these films in order to kind of get audiences like hyped up for the upcoming prequel trilogy, which would premiere like 2 years later in 1999. Then in 2002 we got Attack of the Clones, Phantom Menace in 99, Attack of the Clones in 2002, and then 2005 for Revenge of the Sith. And a lot of the changes I think in the subsequent releases after this were done more to tie all those films together, even though I don't necessarily think like all of it was needed. Like some of it I understand why they did it, like changing out Anakin to be Hayden Christensen to be like kind of makes sense a little bit, but I also kind of still like this. I think Sebastian Stan originally as the kind of ghost of Anakin at the end of the original Empire Strikes Back, or Return of the Jedi, as well as I think they still had some, yeah, because Hayden Christensen wouldn't have been cast yet, so he's still in the special edition in '97 as well. But yeah, they were doing that to get ready for the prequel trilogy. I remember reading a bunch of stuff about the special editions through like the Star Wars Insider magazine. I didn't have a subscription to it or anything, but I remember like picking up an issue here and there, and kind of the big scene that they were kind of like pushing for this thing before it came out was the scene with Jabba the Hutt and Han Solo, which at the time was like I think like really enjoying the scene, thinking it was cool, but like back in retrospect, and like going back, that scene probably it's not good. I don't know what like Jabba it kind of almost goes against Jabba's character. Like you would think Jabba is just like basically would sit at his, on his throne in his palace and direct like minions to go after Han Solo, kind of like the way Greedo goes after him in the in A New Hope. But it's weird because you see Jabba moving around. There's a part where Harrison Ford, like in the original footage, walks behind the guy who Jabba was supposed to be like human at the time. Walks behind him, and I remember seeing like an interview with George Lucas. He's like, "Well, like Harrison just walked behind him. What do we do?" And because his tail's going to be there, and they're like, "Okay, we'll have him step on the tail." Like it just feels like very weird. So like that scene initially I thought was kind of cool, and it was a scene that they were really pushing to kind of like I don't want to sell the movie necessarily, but it was definitely the scene that you saw the most kind of coverage of before the movie came or these movies came out. Let's see the Jabba scene. Some really bad scenes like the scene in Jabba's palace that like I think it's called Lapti Neck is the original. I think that's the better version, but they changed it to Jedi Rocks. They added in a bunch of other members of the Max Rebo band, which I don't think works. So that was a scene I didn't love. The Jabba scene is one that I didn't love either. There's a bunch of other kind of like some of the like the approach to Mos Eisley is interesting, but then you have like that weird like is it like the Ralto like going around. And also a scene that I'm kind of 50-50 on is the updated Wampa scene, because the Wampa you barely see it. You see its face for like a split second when it like swipes at Luke in the Tauntaun. And then in the Empire Strikes Back Special Edition, you have a much more fleshed out version of the Wampa. So it doesn't really detract from anything, but I also kind of like the original to where you barely see this creature. Like you see it briefly when it swipes at them, and then you just see its arm fall to the ground, and then that's kind of it. It's kind of like Jaws. You don't show the monster or Alien or any of those movies. Like the more you show the monster, the less scary it is, kind of thing. So I feel that's how I feel about the Wampa scene now, even though I don't really mind it because you do see it's like reacting to getting its arm cut off, and it's like like that. And I remember seeing the trailer for that for the Empire Strikes Back Special Edition, and really wanted to just watch the trailer again. I'm joking to my friend, I'm like, "Hey, we should go to the movie again just to watch it. Go to." It may have even been a different movie that we were seeing, and it wasn't even Star Wars. But I just wanted to be like, hey, let's go watch that trailer again. It reminded me of when they dropped the first teaser trailer for The Phantom Menace. And I don't know, I think it was Foxtrot was the comic. I could be mistaken. But there was a scene where two characters are running through a movie theater with like a newspaper. Obviously, yeah, newspapers at the time tell you showtimes. They're like, hey, there's a movie starting at like in 10 minutes in this theater. There's another one in 15 minutes. There's another one in 30 minutes. And they're literally just theater hopping with an attempt to just watch the trailer again and again and again. Obviously, this is before. I think the teaser for Phantom Menace was available online, but like back then I had dial-up, so it wasn't really like viewable. It was also like really low quality. Nowadays, a trailer comes out, you can just watch it, like over and over and over again on YouTube or something. But where was I going with that? So like. Oh yeah, that relates to the whole Wampa scene. So the Wampa scene I'm kind of okay with. Some scenes I think do make sense and do work. I have a list of the scenes that I actually like. Let me actually just bring this up and we'll just talk about them here. Okay, so the first scene I liked out of the original A New Hope Special Edition. I didn't mind the dewbacks. I thought the dewbacks were kind of cool because basically you just see, I think they're like a puppet in the first one, and now we're actually fully CG. And you have like they filmed new stuff with, I think they were actually U.S. Marines because they were filming it, I think, in Arizona in the desert when the stormtroopers are walking around before they find the escape pod. So that's a scene I didn't mind in A New Hope. I didn't love the new cantina scene. There's a couple aliens that they took out, which I kind of miss out of the original version. So the cantina scene is still cool, but there's a couple like aliens that are, like no longer like present in that scene, which kind of isn't great. Let's see here. The next scene I really liked out of the original New Hope was I kind of liked the establishing shot of Obi-Wan's house or Obi-Wan's hut. That was cool. And then a scene that I think actually like works better with the movie. It works. This scene I think is kind of critical to the end of the film. There's a great scene with Luke, Biggs, and Red Leader. So you see Luke and Biggs like have like a moment where we're talking to each other, and he's like, Biggs is like, I told you would make it one day, and stuff like that. It definitely covers a lot of their backstory because in the original trilogy, if you watch when when Biggs gets shot down, it cuts to Luke, and Luke is all kind of sad. I'm like, well, why is he? I mean, obviously, like you're losing a squad mate, but there's no real backstory between them without this scene being put back in. So I like the scene between Biggs, Luke, and Red Leader. The next scene I liked out of that was more of a just kind of general visual effects cleanup, or not cleanup, but like it makes the stuff look a lot better. This is Empire Strikes Back now. Is adding in windows to Cloud City. I think the Empire Strikes Back actually has. It's weird. It has like apparently the most amount of changes, but also the least amount of changes that are like story based or like scene based. And a lot of those I think are the Cloud City shots. There's a couple more establishing shots, but there's windows in Cloud City because in the original version, the approach to Cloud City, you see all these nice clouds, but then when they get into the actual like city part of it, it's all just like white corridors. So it's all very kind of sterile looking. So I really like them adding in the windows to Cloud City, and that adds a lot to the movie for me. The scene where Vader's walking to his shuttle I really like because he's like, it's after Luke escapes or like does not join him and what have you, and you just see Vader like talking to some officers. He's like, "Hey, alert my." The line I think is like, "Alert my Star Destroyer, alert my Star Destroyer to wait for my arrival," and it shows him walking through one of the main hallways in Cloud City. And then it shows his shuttle, them boarding his shuttle, and then going and docking with the Executor Super Star Destroyer. So that's a cool scene, and I think I don't know if they reused shots for this or they did something because like basically it's a very similar shot to when the Emperor shuttle arrives on the Death Star in Return of the Jedi. I think they maybe just reused that or flipped it or something like that because Vader's shuttle is again one of those. I think it's like the Lambda class Imperial shuttles. Like really cool ship. The next change in here that I liked. Let me see what we got here after that. So Vader. I kind of actually really liked the wide shot of the establishing shot of the Sarlacc pit because you actually see there's a group of banthas walking by and then it goes. So it just makes the scene feel a little bit bigger. Probably worst scene added into Return of the Jedi was them just putting in that Jedi rock stuff, which Lapti Neck is just more iconic to me. And finally, the thing in Return of the Jedi that I really liked was the victory celebration at the end. So the original Return of the Jedi from 1983, you just have the rebels and the Ewoks just chilling around the campfire, clapping and dancing around and stuff like that. It's still a good scene because it shows that hey, the Empire's been defeated, we can celebrate. But I do think there's wider implications for them showing other planets celebrating. So it's sure, the rebels that actually destroyed the Death Star are celebrating, but other planets that were under the oppression of the Empire are also celebrating. There's celebrations on Cloud City. There's celebrations on Tatooine. There's celebrations on Coruscant. And they topple the statue of Palpatine and things like that. They added in, I think, the celebration scene in the 2004 edition. They added in a Naboo celebration where some of the Gungans are we're free, or whatever they say. So the victory celebration, additional planet celebrating, I really actually do like, because it shows that the Empire is like spread throughout the galaxy, and these other planets were also being oppressed by them. So with this, with it being Star Wars, in most movie videos we do a recap of the plot. I don't feel there's really the need to recap the Star Wars trilogy. We kind of all know the story, so I'm going to kind of spare you with that one. But I think overall, the special edition does add some stuff that I do like. I wish there was a way to just go in and basically just be like, it would be really cool if there's a way to do this, like something on streaming where you can choose which movie you want to watch, and then there'll be a list of all the changes, all the stuff they added in to these subsequent versions of the film, through the 1997 version, through like the 2004 version, the 2011 version, and whatever version they're using for Disney Plus. And you can basically click like check boxes to be like, I don't want the Jabba the Hutt scene, I don't want the new Cantina scene, I don't want the new Approach to Mos Eisley scene, I don't want the Wampa scene, whatever it might be. And then you can kind of watch your own version of the Star Wars trilogy, because I do think there are some scenes in these movies that actually are better, that do work. Like the visual upgrades for Cloud City, for example. I think it's very hard for me to go back and watch the original now, because I do like that they kind of like made Cloud City feel like an actual city. They made it feel larger with the windows looking out to the clouds and all that kind of stuff. So it would be cool if there was like basically a like create your own edition of Star Wars. The technology probably exists. I just don't. Yeah, there's no reason that they would probably ever do that. But with that, I said I did have a back in the 90s. Had a great time going to the theaters with my friends to see this. Like I said, we saw them all kind of opening weekend. The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi we saw like kind of late at night, and it was really cool because like we got out of the theater at like 11, and I didn't get home until like midnight or something. I had school the next day. So it was just a great experience with those films in the theaters, despite kind of some of the changes not really working at all. But that is going to do it for this video. We'll be back in a few days with a video game from 1997, and then we'll jump back into 1998 and the rest of the decade before starting over again. But yeah, that's going to do it for now. So thanks again for watching. Take care. Have a good one, and may the Force be with you.